Seat. We're going to get started. Really thankful for your presence here today. Excited about what's ahead. This has been a fun morning. I feel like a kid in a candy store, getting to spend time this morning with these wonderful LCU alums and getting to hear their stories. And you're in for a treat. It's going to even be better than I had imagined, and that's really good. I was a history major at LCU and am the son of a history professor. So it probably won't surprise you to learn that I believe that understanding the past is a matter of vital importance. If we don't know our history, we don't know where we've been, we cannot chart the path for our future. I have a photograph in my office that says you cannot know where you're going until you know where you've been. And I think that's true. Last year at this conference, we heard from Dr. Lemley reflecting on three important people in LCU's history, three who persevered, as he entitled it. F.W. Maddox, K.C. Mosier, and Gene Hancock. And today we want to continue that tradition of spending some time at this conference looking back and reflecting on LCU's great history. I grew up hearing lots of stories from my mom and dad about Ken Adams and Jimmy Vinson, two young men from Atoka, Oklahoma, who were my dad's first black recruits to LCU. Ken to play basketball and Jimmy baseball. And as you'll see in a moment, we have Jimmy here with us today. Some of my earliest memories include Rob Evans and Bubba Harris in my kitchen, my parents' kitchen. And I don't know if those are real memories or just I've been told so often about them that I feel like, as I was very young at the time, but as you can tell. Marvin Levels is someone who I've always heard about what a great player he was, and so excited that he's able to be here with us today. I'm so excited to get to hear their LCU stories today. Through the research of Dr. Lemley, we've learned more about the history of the admission of black students at LCU more in the last few weeks than I knew. I've always known that Lubbock Christian never had a formal policy excluding blacks from admission here, but I've learned that there was probably an informal policy that excluded them. In fact, at a Board of Trustees meeting on July 18th, 1961, July 18th, 1961, more than 4 years after LCU's founding, the Board of Trustees voted to, quote, accept the application of any student who meets the standard college and LCC requirements. The vote was 15-3 with one abstention. It was the first non-unanimous vote in the history of the LCU Board of Trustees. It was not until the fall of 1963, a little bit more than 2 years later, that the first black students enrolled at Lubbock Christian. There's so much I would like to say here, and I'm really trying to be brief because I want to hear from our guests more than from me. There's a lot of great history here, interesting history. You think about the time and all that was going on. Brown versus Board of Education decision in 1954, the Civil Rights Act passed in 1964, all that's happening in this part of the world at that time. And so in the fall of 1963, 7 black students are featured in the Lubbock Christian College yearbook in the freshman class. And I thought it would be appropriate before we began to say their names. We've talked to many of them. We haven't found all of them, but to say their names and to see their yearbook pictures from that year. Ken Adams from Atoka, Oklahoma, our first black basketball recruit. I had a great privilege of speaking to Ken, and he spoke to our guest by phone today, first time in a while that they had a chance to reconnect. That was great to hear from Ken. He wishes he could be here. Ella Moore from Lubbock, who appears also as a member of Kappa Phi Kappa. Della Newman from Lubbock. Joyce Robinson from Lubbock, also a member of Kappa Phi Kappa and in the band. Billy Tucker, also from Lubbock and also in the band. We don't, that's not Billy. There you go. Jimmy Vinson, who is with us today, and you'll hear more from in a moment. Also from Atoka, Oklahoma, in the A Capella Chorus, and our first black baseball recruit. And Mildred Williams, also from Lubbock. 6 of the 7 enrolled at LCC the next year, and they were joined by 14 more black students, including Rob Evans and Bubba Harris, Nathanial Bubba Harris, who is with us today, bringing the total that year to 20 students. LCU was ahead of a number of schools, including Texas Tech and Texas A&M, in integrating its sports teams. I was talking to Rob today, and he helped me get this date. 1966 is the year that Southwest Conference first integrated its athletics competition. However, our enrollment of black students in the fall of 1963 fit squarely in the middle of what was happening in this part of the country. Texas Tech admitted its first undergrads in 1962 following a lawsuit. SMU and ACU admitted blacks in their undergraduate programs that same year. LCU and Texas A&M in 63, Lipscomb and Baylor in 64, just to give you some points of reference. I am so thankful to have this opportunity to hear from these panelists, and we have the perfect moderator, Dr. Steve Limley, who was a classmate of 3 of these 4 alumni today, and he will take us through the rest of the conversation. Won't you join me in welcoming our panelists?
So good to see the 4 of you. 3 of us were in school together, and I suppose that I knew Jim best because we traveled together in the A Capella Chorus, lived in the dormitory. I think we were all in the dormitory, were we not? Were you? Yeah, also in the dormitory in Johnson Hall. And so we lived in fairly close proximity and saw each other often. And Marvin, having come in 1965, I missed you, Marvin, but we're glad that you're here today. Well, the purpose of our doing this, I think, has been made fairly clear by President Parrott, and I really appreciate that perspective, the way in which you have framed this for us. But this is not exactly a celebration. In some ways, it's a homecoming. It's not exactly a celebration because, as Tim has said, Lubbock Christian College was not out front in this movement. We were not last either. We were early, as President Parrott has clarified, I think, in our official policy. And it remains a mystery to all of us at this point, though I have interviewed several people, why it took 2 years for the first class to be introduced. Now, we want to spend most of the time today talking about your Lubbock Christian College experience, what you remember about it. But I think a few years have passed since those days. And it strikes me that the 3 of you have lived very productive lives. It's clear that you have had a good many wonderful things that have happened to you in your lives, and I think that's a good place to start. Who are you now? Tell us about yourselves now. And I think it's appropriate that we start with the oldest among you. Jim and I would be the same age. We know how old the other is, don't we, Jim? Tell us about some of the things that you want to share regarding what you've done, where you've been, family, anything you like.
Well, I'm going to start with when I left. Is that fine? After I left here, of course, I went home for a while, Atoka, and then I went to the Navy. After getting in the Navy and knowing it was a mistake, I went to Vietnam. I rode the little PBR boats for a year and came back, made a whole lot better person out of me, and I had a whole lot of respect for life after that. after I came home again, tried to stay in Atoka, got married, worked at the fire department up in McAllister. Went from there to Oklahoma City for 11 years, worked for General Motors, worked for Dayton Tire and Rubber. My mom was ill, so I moved home in '82, and I've been there ever since. I retired from the fire department because I went back to the same job 17 years later, and retired from MACAP Fire Department, DOD, as Assistant Chief of Operations and EMS. Now I got all kind of undone projects at home. Now that I'm retired, I have a few quarter horses that I don't ride anymore. I pet on them and rub them, and my grandson here, he likes to sit on them. And that's it. I'm glad to be back here. I've been welcomed back by everyone. I feel so great. I'm sorry that I hadn't been here before. I've been through here a couple of times. I came and looked at the campus, but I didn't talk to anyone. The first time my sister lived in the Midland, Odessa area, but she was in the hospital here. So I came back to Lubbock for the second time, but like I said, I didn't come out here. I should have. That was my mistake for not doing it. I'm glad I'm back. I see what we have done and what we're still doing, and I love it here. I love it here. I can't wait to talk to you. Hadn't seen you in years. And that's it. I'm retired. I'm at home. My mom passed, and I'm staying where she lived. I'm back at the old home place, and I got all kind of time now. You know? I travel. I hunt and fish. Used to do more, but I'm a turkey hunter. You see, if you can go to sleep in the woods, you can become a good turkey hunter. I'm one of the best.
Nathaniel,
Thank you.
Oh, good. Let's give him a hand. Nathaniel, tell us about your life.
Well, it's kind of hard to follow Jimmy, as always. You can tell he's a big talker. But at any rate, I came here a young man and really left as a gentleman. You know, I graduated in 2 years. Coach Perrin told us all as athletes that you will take enough hours to graduate where you can go to senior college. So I had 6 to 8 hours. And I left there, went to New Mexico State, finished there and came to Dallas, Texas. Thought I wanted to teach, but as you know, during those times, kids were different. So I applied for the U.S. Postal Service. I worked there 42 years, retired as a postmaster of DeSoto. Have a wife for 46 years, have 3 kids, 2 boys, 4 grandkids. So as you can see, what LCC did for me gave me a foundation. I've been productive in life. I'm on several boards, active in my church. So I'm sure I get a chance to tell you more, but this was a great experience for me, and I owe it all to Jim Ravenelli.
Jim Ravenelli was the student recruiter who found Nathanial. And I talked to Jim Saturday on the telephone, and he sent his special greeting to Nathanial. Rob, tell us about your life.
Well, I'm originally from Hobbs, New Mexico. Played basketball there, was very fortunate. Had great parents. My dad was a minister, Church of Christ minister for 60-something years. And I came to LCC. First person I saw when I came to LCC was Bubba Harris. He's my roommate, and as I always tell people, my dad made the big mistake of after he dropped me off, he told Bubba, said, make sure you take care of Rob. And it's been 50-something years later, and he still tells me he's supposed to take care of me. And he's done a pretty good job of that. He and I very, very close. We over the years we don't go a week without touching base with each other. If he haven't heard from me in a week, then we touch base, and that's what we got started here at LCC. I left LCC. I was fortunate enough that I was the first basketball All-American here at LCC, and went on to play at New Mexico State University for Lou Vinson. And I learned a little bit about recruiting after he was recruiting me, because he would show up here at the cafeteria about 3 times a week. And Bubba would always tell me I'd be eating my food, and Bubba would say, "Your coach is over here." And I look over now, what is he doing here? And he was at New Mexico State, and I was trying to get him off, off me from recruiting me. So he was saying, I finally told him, I said, "Listen," I said, I don't want to make a decision, until I get home and when school's out. And when school's out, I'll sign with you. And I thought that would get rid of him. And my sister was going to school here at the same time. She was a freshman here, and so we graduate that night. I leave the next morning, load up, drive up to my home, and I see this. I said, "Man, whose car is that here at the house?" And I walk in, and Lou Vinson's there, and he says, "School's out," So I end up signing New Mexico State. Had a very productive career there at New Mexico State, and stayed on, and took him to 2 NCAA tournament teams where we played Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Elvin Hayes in that group for in my years. Then I stayed on and coached with at New Mexico State basketball for 6 years. I was there as assistant for 6 years. Left there in 1975, came to Texas Tech. I was assistant coach at Texas Tech for 15 years to 1990. And then went to Oklahoma State, was assistant coach at Oklahoma State with Eddie Sutton for 2 years, and was very fortunate. In 1992, I was called to University of Mississippi to be the head coach there. And the reason that I was called there was there was a former teammate of mine here at LCC who, unfortunately, when he was here, he ended up tearing his knee up. And when he tore his knee up, I was the captain of the team, and he was in Methodist Hospital for some time because he had blood clots. And I would take him his homework to the hospital practically every day. And later on in 1992, Gerald Turner, who is the president of SMU, called me and said, "I want you to be my basketball coach." And I ended up going there against a lot of coaches' advice. They told me it was a dead-end job. You couldn't win there. You couldn't do this. And I ended up going there, and with Gerald's help, we ended up winning back-to-back championships in the SEC. And I was fortunate because the people there didn't care a whole lot about basketball. So they didn't do a whole lot financially for it. So when I would go and ask the athletic director, I'd say, I need this and this and this. And he said, "We don't have money to do that." And I would say, "So you telling me if you had the money to do that, we'd do it?" And he said, "Yeah, if we had the money, we'd do it." So I picked the phone up and called Gerald. I said, "Gerald, I need this and that." He picked the phone up and called the athletic director and said, "Whatever Rob needs over there, give it to him." So I told my staff, I said, "We're going to have to win before Gerald leaves here because we're upsetting this athletic director." So we ended up winning championships, and then I left there in 1998, went to Arizona State as the head basketball coach. I was there for 8 years. Left Arizona State and went to Arkansas for 4 years as the associate head coach. Left Arkansas, went to TCU for a year, and then one of my former players at Texas Tech got the head job at North Texas, University of North Texas, and he actually was one of my assistant coaches at Arizona State. He's my cousin from Hobbs, and he says, "Coach," he said, "Rob, I need you over here." And I said, "Tony, I'm going to have to take a big pay cut. I don't want to move. My wife and I just been here for about 9 months. I got her to move here. I don't know if she want to move again." So, I was wrestling with it, and I finally told him, I said, "I don't think I can do it, Tony." And so we're laying in bed one night about 3 o'clock in the morning, and my wife was awake. I didn't know she was awake. I'm awake, and she says, "So what are you going to do?" And I said, "I don't know. What do you want to do?" She said, "This ain't about me. This is about you. What do you want to do? You know you're not going to be happy unless you're up in Tony, so let's pack up and go." So we're at North Texas, and as Bubba said, My wife and I, she grew up with me in Hobbs, and we've been married for 44 years. I have a son and a daughter. My son lives in Arizona, Scottsdale. My daughter lives in Memphis. My daughter and her husband have 4 kids, so I have 4 grandkids here, and I have 2 with my son and his wife in Phoenix. And I've been fortunate. I've been able to come back to LCU for a few times. I came back for Dr. Perry's inauguration, and I was with Gerald, and I've come back a number of times. Came back and saw Mrs. Perry and Coach Perry a few times when the field house was, was named, and so I have a very, very close affinity to LCU. I'm very, very proud to always tell people that's my alma mater. My diploma hangs up in my office, and I'm proud to say that I'm an LCU grad.
Rob glazed over one big important thing. Now, neither he nor I had a car. So in order for him to take Gerald those assignments, a little guy named Ross Ainworth let us use his car every day. So that's the kind of people that was here during that time.
Hayes' brother, wasn't it? Yeah, Del Hayes' brother. That's right. Okay, thank you. And so, Marvin, tell us about your life.
Good evening, afternoon. I'm Marvin Levels. I don't know if you can recognize me on the picture over there, but number 14, what I had, maybe you can recognize me that way, but I don't know. This was and has been a wonderful place for years and years. I couldn't have been blessed any more than to come to Lubbock Christian to continue and start me on the way that I've gone. Today's date, when I came to to Lubbock, Coach Perrin and Coach Rogers were my coaches at that time. Of course, Robert and Bubba here was my teammates, and they were real good leaders for me to help me to get going at Lubbock Christian as well. And Coach Perrin, I could never have found a better coach than Coach Perrin and also Coach Rogers. I came, when I left here in '67, Coach Perrin got me a scholarship at Harding University. Of course, we went to Harding. We scheduled a junior college tournament up there. It was 4 teams. And he took us up to Harding to play. And the first game, this young man set a record and scored 37 points for the tournament. And on the team he was playing against. And we played the second game, and I scored 39. We broke his record. I broke his record at that time. That's one of the things I remember. And the next night we played, we won the tournament, and they offered me a scholarship there, and Coach Perrin even came back to see us play after I got there, and I just couldn't believe it. Today, when I left Harding, I got a job I've been in the coaching. I coached for 36 years. I've been retired for about 10 years now, and starting in Clarendon, Arkansas, and then the second year I left, when I went down to Fort Worth, Texas, and I've been down there ever since, from 1970 through today. And I got a message from Ms. Shooter that you had an activity going on today. And that's all I needed to know. She said, hey, there's no way I could turn down anything that's going on here. If you would like for me to come, I'm going to come, no matter what, if at all possible. And this is the type of place this is and has been for years and years and years. And I know it's going to continue to be so. But I met my wife at Harding also, and we have 3 kids. They're all doing great. Not a problem with them. 2 of them are teachers as well. And my son, he do a lot of refereeing and stuff like that. So maybe I can get him to referee some games for Harding. But he's getting ready to do some college games as well as others. But everything has been great. And like I said, my family and my wife, we've been together for 44 years. My guys here mentioned 40-something years as well. So we are been blessed to have that. But I'm just blessed to be here today, and anything that I can do, I'm going to do it. Amen.
Well, the thing that we want to talk about now is the fact that you were among the first African American students to attend Lubbock Christian College. And what that meant to you then, perhaps what it means to you now. I will say that one of the interesting things about my coming in 1963 was that I had grown up in New Mexico. There was no institutional segregation in New Mexico, as you know, Rob. Public schools were integrated. And so when I arrived on the campus in 1963, and there were African American students on this campus, it didn't occur to me that you were among the first. In fact, I didn't know that until several years later, because really nothing was made of it that I recall. There was no announcement in chapel. There was nobody that stood up and said, we need to welcome these people. And one of the odd things about it is that I don't recall students, the students that I was around, talking about it, either pro or con. It just wasn't a topic of conversation. That's how it looked to me, but I don't know how it looked to you. And so I want to go back to Jim and ask you, did you know that you were breaking new ground when you came to Lubbock Christian College?
I didn't know it myself till later on. And as far as, I might be getting ahead of myself here, but as far as the treatments, I never saw any different treatment. I never saw any different treatment. Like I was telling Tim, the only different treatment I saw is when me and Ken and Miss Robinson and Miss Williams was over at Big Jim's barbecue, and the guys was gonna beat us up, you know. And these were black folks; they wasn't white folks. So, you know, they thought we was taking their girls, but but that was the closest I came to. Well, I don't say being discriminated against, was being beat up anyway. The only thing that I remember, and you probably asked this question about the A Capella Choir. Should I go ahead now? Okay. I traveled with the A Capella Choir along with, 87 other people? And like I say, the first here and the first there, and you know you're first when you're the only one riding on the bus, right? But there was no difference there either. Steve, some of the other people there, James Crowder, if you guys remember him with his deep voice, they made you feel so welcome. I mean, it's just like, there was no difference. There was no difference.
When we pulled up at the church buildings to go into the homes, what happened? Do you recall? This was the first time I had seen anything like this exactly happen in this way. So the chorus would pull up to the church building, and we would be met by families who were going to take us into their homes, feed us, bring us back to the concert, and then take us home to spend the night. You were treated a little differently there.
A couple times. But it all levels out because some of the times I was taken first, too. It wasn't like I was taken last all the time. You know, most of the time in the middle. And the one time, my roommate was Ray Owen. Remember Ray?
Ray Owen, yeah.
Ray Owen, I think he's from Wheeler, Texas.
Uh-huh.
And we was in the southern part of Texas, and didn't nobody want us, I guess. So we went over in old Mexico and spent the night.
No! That wasn't what I wanted you to talk about.
You said tell the truth, so I'm telling you. They treat us fine over there. We're just being creative. But
Let me tell you something. Wayne Hines is still very active, very much alive, and
Is
living
he?
not far from here, and I'm going to tell him what you did.
well,
Well, here's what I remember. What I remember is that it was all in East Texas and South Texas when we would go, at least in those places, it seemed to me that it was always an African American family that pulled up to take you home. Does that not square with your memory?
I remember one time.
Just once?
Just the one time.
Okay. Well,
And I don't even remember what city it was in. Excuse me.
yeah,
Tell you the
somewhere in East Texas. I remember that because it was sort of the first time that some of us who were on the bus with you kind of recognized that in some parts of this world, you know, certain conventions had to be observed, and that was one of the places where it did. Well, that's really interesting to hear.
You know, that might be something I blocked out,
Uh-huh, yeah.
but I don't remember it but one time, and I don't even remember where we were.
Yeah, yeah,
But like I said, me and Ray sit there sometimes.
yeah.
But some of the times,
So that was it. So you had to kind of wait till the end a lot of
well,
times for
it's
somebody
certain places,
to
yeah.
take you. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting. Okay, well, all right. Tell us what you remember about
Well,
being among the first.
We really had no bad problems at Lubbock Christian. I graduated from integrated high school. We get
Yeah.
integrated in 62.
and that was your high school was
Brady High School.
Brady. So Brady was integrated in '62.
Yes, that's how I
Okay.
met Jim Bravanelli. And we had, the only time we encountered problems was when we was beating teams on their home floor, which is a natural reaction, you know. So the kind of things they were saying, we kind of expected to hear that. That's why we put 10 more points on them.
Rob, you grew up in Hobbs, and that was a different kind of place.
Yeah, I grew up in Hobbs. Of course, you know, one thing you have to understand is that we, as young kids, were taught by our parents to be prepared for anything that was out of the way, and that we were there for one reason, and that was to get an education, and you know, not to create any problems. But this was a very secure place here at Lubbock Christian. You know, you asked the question. I had no idea that Jimmy was the first or we were the second or whatever, because it was never ever brought up. And in the dorms, you know, we were all good friends. You know, of course, I tell you, you know, everybody, just like brothers. We were all good friends. There was never ever anything. Now, when you got off campus. When we got off campus, Bubba and I would like to go to the library at Texas Tech. We couldn't go on Texas Tech campus at that time and use their library, so we recognized that. And I made the comment, that was in 1966, and I came back as coach there in 1975, and I made that comment that I couldn't come on this campus 10 years ago. Now I'm coming back as assistant coach. So a lot of things had progressed at that particular time. But you know, there was no animosity on this campus. Now, when we would go play basketball games, and we would travel to Borger, up that way, Clarendon, that way, we were certain that, you know, when, you know, there were many nights at Bubba T, I scored 51, 52 points, and, you know, certain places we couldn't stop and eat, you know, so we'd have to keep moving. You know, Coach Perry would say, well, if they can't get out, we're going home, you know. But that was, we understood that, you know, not that we liked it, but we knew what we were here for. It was no issue for us because, and especially once we got back to this campus, I told somebody a story today. I think I told Tim the story. I'm coaching at Arizona State. Probably must have been like 2006, 2005. And my wife and I were trying to find a church home. And so we were all over the place. We were going to different churches every week, trying to figure out a place that we really would feel comfortable. We felt comfortable at Vandalia when we were here. But so I told her, let's go to Paradise Valley this week, and see if we see that church. So we went there. It's about 20 miles from where we lived. So we went to that church, and they had a visiting preacher there that day. And so I'm sitting there, and I told my wife, I said, I know that guy. I know that guy, and this is like in 2006. And I said, I haven't seen him in 40 years, but I know that guy. And I said, and they introduced his wife, and I said, I know her too. I said, I went to school with these people. And so when church was over with, of course, the visiting preacher was at the back shaking hands, and I walked up and I said, Rob Evans. And he said, Penny Nichols. And he said, I have been looking for you. And it just so happened that day he was visiting, and I happened to go that day. He ended up being the minister there. We ended up going there. But, I recognized him because he was a friend on this campus.
Well, my situation is similar to what you've heard already. No non-discrimination whatsoever. And Rob and Bubba, we were all in the big room there together, and they were here a year ahead of me, so they could kind of direct me what I could do, what was going on, everything. So it was good leadership as far as they're concerned. And if something did happen on a trip or something when we went to play games, coach is not going to let anything like that occur to any of the players. So I never had a problem whatsoever as far as that's concerned.
We were talking about the sports and how the athletes, they don't care whether you're green or blue or black or white. They want to know if you can play ball. When Tim and I was talking on the way to the airport, that's one of the conversations we had. I mean, you talk crap to each other on the floor. You guys don't know what's going on unless a fight break out, but you talking out there. You talking stuff to somebody, and they talking stuff to you most of the time, trying to get you out of your game, but that's part of the game. I mean, that's part of the game. That's all I got to say about that part of the racism.
You had two of the better talkers on the floor right here.
When they're on the floor. You guys in the stands don't hear it, but it's going on, I guarantee.
Jim, did you attend in high school? Were you in a segregated school?
Atoka integrated 59, 56. I was in the 7th grade.
Well,
So it wasn't nothing. Now,
yeah.
that was different. That wasn't LCC, I guarantee you.
Really?
It wasn't LCU, It wasn't either one. We was down under the hill most every day trying to straighten stuff out. But that's part of it. I was glad it wasn't like that. I'd hate to go through it again. You guys didn't have a hill for us to hide behind and fight.
Let's see. Nathanial, did you attend a segregated school?
That's Marvin.
I'm sorry, Marvin. Yeah. Did you attend a segregated school, Marvin? Yeah. What was that like?
Pardon me?
What was that like? What was it like?
Well, I did attend a segregated school. In 1965, when I graduated from high school, the next year is when when they all went together and integrated as one. And to go from an integrated school and come to a LCC, it took me some time to make the adjustment, and I got plenty of help. A lot of the teachers really did work with me and trying to help me to understand better, and I'm, proud and happy for that and everything. And I was brought up in a way in which failure could not be accepted by my parents and what have you. So when we would travel sometime from here to New Mexico, to Amarillo, wherever to play basketball, I'd have my books with me or my notes or whatever so I could make sure that I didn't fail. End of the semester, I was doing great. From then on, everything got better and better. But because it takes time to make any adjustment, and you have to understand that.
Yeah, can I make a comment? My dad was from Navasota, Texas, and my mom was from Norman G, Texas. And in those cities in the 60s, you had to go to the rear of the restaurant to get a hamburger. And it was just like that in Brady also until 62. But that wasn't unusual. That was a known fact. And we knew our place, if you want to put it that way. But that was not happening here in Lubbock when we got here.
So in the city of Lubbock, you didn't find that kind of reception. Well, it was a revelation to me in the fall of 1963. I didn't have a car. I was riding around with a friend who took me down Quaker Avenue and pointed to Dunbar High School and said, "That's where the black students go." And that surprised me because I just assumed that West Texas was going to be a lot more like New Mexico. But there was still a segregated school in the city of Lubbock in 63, public school.
Well, when I was at Hobbs High School, and we played all the teams in West Texas, played Midland, Pampa, all those places, and we had a lot of issues when we went to places like Pampa in Borga. Matter of fact, we were run out of the gym one night in Pampa, Texas. So we were pretty, so coming to Lubbock and coming to Lubbock Christian, I had my antenna up, but getting here, there was nothing here. But in certain cities, in certain little towns, in West Texas, you did have, you weren't welcome, and we knew that. But again, from the time that we were little kids, you felt if you were welcome, if you weren't welcome. You knew that, and you stayed away from those places. We were always taught to stay away from those places to avoid any kind of trouble. So our antennas we were taught early.
Yeah, wow. Well, we haven't perfected things yet, have we?
Well, let me tell you, things are so much better than they were. I like to talk about basketball because when I started coaching basketball on the collegiate level in 1968, there were zero head Afro-American basketball coaches in this country. Zero. I was one of 3 black assistant coaches in the country in 1968, myself, George Raven, and Fox Snowden. And now there are a tremendous amount. So there's been a lot of progress. Is there still things that people need to work on? Yes, we all do. But, the progress has been made, has been slow progress, but we were talking today in the car. Our kids these days don't understand the trail that we blazed for them.
Yes, right. And you did blaze a trail.
If I can make a comment, I went to the Postal Service in Dallas in 1968, and still they had water fountains that was colored and white. They had no women working there. All of their employees was ex-Army, Navy, Marines and things. They didn't start hiring blacks until 68. Didn't start hiring women until 1970. And then, of course, you get to diversity, and that makes the organization better. But this was not unique during the time that we came to this school. The whole United States was behind. You had areas and pockets of the country that was a little bit more progressive than others. But what we had here was not unique to the United States. But we didn't encounter any of that. We had people that were progressive. I think they had a vision of what they wanted. We also had exchange students here when I got here, a guy from Panama and Canal and different places. And what that does for you, it gives you opportunity to meet people with different ideals. And they were very educated, all of them were. Matter of fact, they made A's, which made us mad, you know. But at any rate, so the times it was different then. I was the first black postmaster in Dallas, and you know, so being the first to graduate from Lubbock Christian was not unique because we all have blazed trails. It's not, you know, what you do, but it's how you do it, and if you can reach back and help others to get there.
That's great.
Now,
That's great.
all of my kids graduated. My daughter got 2 master's degrees. She's going to be a principal next year. My second daughter, and my first daughter did too. My son works for General Motors. But what we have to impress on people is to get education, and that's what Coach Perrin and all of the counselors and everybody told us, to get an education, because when you're through playing ball, we're going to be through with you. You know, so really, it's not a bad comment, but you have to have some goals. And they were not negative. They was giving you the incentive to be better and not fail.
You know, you asked the question about Lubbock Christian. You know, looking back on it, you know, and I would not expect it to have any issues here at Lubbock Christian, strictly because of the faculty and the people that were here. I mean, it's all about the people. And the people here were, you know, I wouldn't think that they would have any prejudice, any animosity. You know, I know the people we were around. I mean, Coach Perrin, he was, you know, he was tough on everybody. You know, he wasn't just tough on us 3. You know, I mean, he was tough. He's tough on everybody.
Tough on Tim.
You know, so there was no prejudice there. I mean, you know, and there was none because of the. I mean, you're talking about, you know, you're talking about Dr. Mosier, you're talking about Dr. Bostic, you're talking about people like that, Maddox, Dr. Maddox. Those are true. Those people were just true blue people, and you know, it was a, you know, I told Tim, Dr. Perrin today. Sorry, I'm Dr. Perrin. I told Tim this today on the way to the car. After my first year here at Lubbock Christian, I had a very good year for a freshman, and during the summer I was being recruited again away from Lubbock Christian by some high-profile universities, and I told them, you know, thanks but no thanks. I'm going back to Lubbock Christian, you know, because just because of the people, the way the people were, not just the faculty, but all the students. You know, I'm still good friends with a lot of those students. Gerald Turner and I talk, you know, every couple of weeks. You know, so just a great family atmosphere here.
That's wonderful to hear. I wonder if you have questions that you'd like to raise. We have 10 minutes or so left in the hour. Questions from the audience, just stand up where you are and ask it as loud as you can, and we'll see where it leads.
Here I am.
Kind of curious, when this school started, it was in the middle of a cotton field.
We were in it.
We pulled some of that cotton.
What y'all do for fun around here?
We threw cotton balls at each other.
Well, you know, they had the city of Lubbock. And well, we had, especially Rob and I, we had connections inside the black community. They would come out and get us and take us to church sometime, feed us on Sunday, holidays when the school was closed. So it wasn't all like we were just locked in. It's a long ways out here on 19th Street. Matter of fact, during that time, I think you were closer to South Plains than you were to Lubbock. But, you know, young 18-year-old people with friends that had cars, you find things to do. You hadn't been the way you are always, so.
Plus we had curfew. You know, we had curfew and bed check, and Ken Hayes would be over there, and he was sitting at the front desk, and you had to make sure you got in. Many nights, Bubba and I would come running through there, you know, and be a few minutes late, and be in the room and in bed before he could come and unlock our door and see if we were there.
But they were harder on us than they were the girls. They were.
Other questions?
Anything but the cotton fields.
I was in Cornell.
Cornelius.
Cornelius.
No club.
Most of the athletes, well, they
question was, were they engaged in other things? I just happen to have a little list here. So Ken Adams was in Koinonia on the basketball team. Jim Vinson was in baseball and a cappella.
And Koinonia.
And you were in Koinonia? Okay, I didn't get that. Ella Moore was in Kappa Phi Kappa. Joyce Robinson was in the band and in Kappa Phi Kappa. Billy Tucker was in the band. Let's see. And then the following year, Mildred Williams was in CD's and was an officer in CD's. And Joyce Robinson was still in the band, and she was still in the band, and she was the band's representative, the Music Masters, and Ella Moore was the representative of the Interclub Council. So they weren't just here, you know.
And I had a sister that came the year after, a year behind me, and she was on the track team. You know, so we were engaged in a lot of different things. And plus, as far as the entertainment you're talking about, we played dominoes every day with Coach Perrin. You know, so we had a lot of fun.
There was one incident that I've got to tell about. This is before Bubba and Rob came. All of us guys, he talked me and Ken into doing it too. They had cars and we didn't. So we got out on one of these fields and they all made a circle with the lights on and we trapped a couple of jackrabbits. And at 18, 19, you guess what we did with it? We threw them down the girl's door. That was fun.
We didn't do none of that when we came.
That kind of stuff, huh?
No, none of that.
Okay, is there anything that any one of the four of you would like to add? A story you'd like to tell? Anything else you think we do?
Well, I'd like to tell about Coach Perrin and his driving. I don't know where y'all heard or not, but you know, as 18, 19-year-old kids, and you driving, you just played a game, and you have to come all the way back to Lubbock, 150 miles, and you have to fear for your life every mile. I know it. It was an old station wagon at that, but worse than that, we learned not to ask him any questions, because if you did, he'd turn all the way around. And he'd hold a conversation with you. So we started asking him one word, yes or no answer, so he couldn't do that. But I'll let Rob tell you about the night we came back from New Mexico.
Yeah, we were coming back one night. We had played at Roswell against New Mexico military. And of course, it had come a huge snowstorm while we were playing. And there's two ways to get in Roswell. And one, you have to go up over a hill and down. And so we got through playing, and so Coach said he didn't think he could get up over that hill coming back this way, so we were going to have to come back through Hobbs. And that way, which was fine with me, because, you know, I thought maybe we'll stop and I get a chance to see my parents. But we're driving back, and it's just snowing. You can't even see in front of you. And Coach is driving, and he's talking and looking back, and you know what he's saying. Finally, after a while, he said, guys, I can't see anything. And Bubba said, well, Coach, there's a cow right over here, right next to us here. And he had veered off into a field, you know. And I'm like, well, I mean, that's a true story.
Well, I'd just like to say that Coach Coach and Miss Perrin would always invite us over to the house to eat. Eat. We would love to go there every time we could to do so. And whenever I had an opportunity to come to Lubbock, I always had to go by and visit and see them before they passed away. My daughter was on the track team. My hometown is down in Tig, Texas, but I live in Fort Worth, and my daughter was on the track team, and they came to Texas Tech for the regional track meet. And while we were in Lubbock, we had to go by and visit and see if we could get a little something to eat. And they always going to kind of come in, hey, what do you want? You want something to eat or whatever? They would take care of us. And I just want you to know that.
Well, you have encouraged us, you have blessed us, and we see what outstanding people you are. And if you don't mind, as we bring this to a close, I'd like to lead a prayer. Dear God, I want to thank you for Rob, Nathaniel, Marvin, Jim, for the blessing that they were as students here. We thank you for the blessing that their lives have been to the world, to your kingdom. And we pray your continued blessings on them for their health, for their work, for their relationships, for all that is important, for all that matters in their life. We pray your blessings and your strong and mighty hand. We pray your blessings on this day as well. May we take these memories with us from this conference, and may we all be uplifted in our work by knowing what happens to so many of the people who pass through our classrooms at Lubbock Christian University. We pray all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you all. I tell you, when I asked them to come, each and every one of them said yes, without hesitation, and all had the attitude that I like all of our alums to have, that, we want to do whatever we can to help Lubbock Christian. And this was such a gift today for each of you to be here and to bless us with these words and these stories, to hear it from your own experiences. So meaningful to me, so I appreciate that. Let me just say, my dad was a bad driver until he died. He got worse, not better, over time. So it was one of those things. More experience did not make him a better operator of a motor vehicle. But we have some gifts for you here. Just we want you to go away with some LCU attire. So we're sending you home. Wear your blue proudly, we hope, and just a very small token of our appreciation for your participation in this. And would you join me one more time in saying thank you to our guests? Let's take 10 minutes.